What's up guys, I'm Flukes of Hazard, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be starting a new campaign. Our pilot is Thomas Sutherland, and he is the son of a World War I fighter pilot. He gets into building model airplanes, falls for his best friend's younger sister, and gets engaged to her, and then he goes off to war. Our campaign is starting the day after D-Day, so June the 7th, 1944, and he's going to be flying P-38s with the 392nd Fighter Squadron. And as you're going to see shortly, today's video takes a bit of a different turn than what I had originally planned for this. So without further ado, let's get into it. Our mission briefing for today is we're going to take off from Ibsley Airfield, and our weather is heavy clouds at 5,100 feet with drizzling rain, east-southeast wind at 10 miles an hour with no turbulence, and temperature is 51 degrees. So definitely icing conditions, but we don't really have to worry about that too much. We're going to come down by Cherbourg before turning towards the landing beaches at Juno and Sword Beach, and then conduct a patrol over the landing beaches and engage any fighters that come out to play. After which we will return to our airfield and land.
Warcraft, cleared for takeoff. Warcraft, taking off. Out. This is flight. Warcraft, airborne. Over. Warcraft, proceed with your mission. Warcraft, 2, airborne. Warcraft, 3, airborne. Warcraft, 4, airborne. Warcraft, 5, airborne. Warcraft, 6, airborne. Warcraft, 7, airborne. Warcraft, 8, airborne.
Now this mission, as I mentioned, took a bit of a different turn than what I had anticipated. I had actually taken probably about 5 or 6 attempts at recording footage for this video, and for various reasons they all failed. But this one, I happened to capture something that was... well, it's something that I've seen mentioned in the forum that I actually managed to capture on video. It's a known bug, and it's one that from what I can tell, has existed since the release of Battle of Bodenplatte. And I wanted to take the opportunity with this video to kind of touch upon it and give my suggestions as to potential fixes or workarounds that might be able to be implemented fairly easily should the developers decide to do something about it. And specifically the bug that I'm referring to, you'll see here shortly, is one in which the AI fails to continue on to a mission target after an event that interrupts the scripting for what the AI is supposed to do during the mission. Now, you'll see here shortly, we'll get intercepted short of the patrol area and be forced to engage enemy fighters, which overall shouldn't be an issue. It's certainly realistic. It's certainly something that happened plenty of times during World War II. But as from a playability standpoint, this is where I think there's a bug. Now, in this particular instance, I think two things happened. The first triggering event is getting intercepted, and for that I don't really have a workaround other than playing the campaign as the squadron commander from the very start. If you play as the commander from the very start, you're able to order your wingmen back into formation after dealing with a threat and continue on with the mission. But when you're a wingman, you don't have the ability to give orders to any of the members of your flight. You can't even ask your wingman to cover you. So here we're getting engaged by FW-190s. And the initial engagement is not terribly bad, but the commanding officer does get shot down in the process. Spoiler alert. And that's where I think the second problem happens. So after he gets shot down, command of the unit gets passed on to his wingman, but the wingman never gives the command for the flight to rejoin and continue on with the mission. And that's where I think the problem with the bug lies. I don't think it's so much that we get intercepted short of the target, although that could be an additional bug. It's certainly been mentioned as one. But I think the problem is with the rest of the AI wingmen not having the ability to take command and issue orders to continue the mission, it causes the AI logic to kind of freeze up. And they will just continue doing whatever it is they're doing in the area they're doing it until they either get shot down or hit bingo fuel and trigger an event to return to base. And as for a possible fix for that, I think that either giving the player the ability to take command of the flight in the event the flight leader is shot down could be a possible fix or workaround. Or reworking the AI logic so that as command is passed from one member of the squadron to the next as they get killed, the next person in line has the ability to continue on with the mission. Now, I can't say that this would completely fix it, but a third possibility is that if those two workarounds are time-consuming options that are going to be really difficult to implement, then just make the waypoints triggered on the player instead of the flight, and make the trigger zone large enough to where it doesn't matter if the player is out of position. Like if he's flying the number 8 position in the formation and he's out of formation by a half a mile to a mile, have that trigger zone for the waypoint be large enough that he can still clear that waypoint and have it trigger the next waypoint so that the mission doesn't fail. That way, even if the AI continues just flying around one point on the map, stuck and unable to decide what to do next, then the player can still complete the mission. It's my idea anyway. That's my suggestion for fixing it. I can't say that it would be the be-all end-all fix or workaround, but what I can say is if the trigger points in the game, in the campaign specifically, are set to the player instead of the AI, it would, or should, at least create a situation where the player's still able to complete the mission even if the AI bugs. And right here is where our flight commander gets shot down. There he goes. It's at this point that I think the mission really bugged. Because from this point, and from what I can tell, the only thing the AI knows to do at this stage is to finish eliminating the threat that the enemy fighters pose. And it doesn't seem to me like the logic moves on from there, and I'm not sure entirely why. I've given my theory on it, and my possible workarounds, but I can't say for sure exactly what's causing it. And this, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that has been mentioned on the forum for several years now, so I find it hard to believe that the developers are not aware of it. It's definitely game-breaking. A lot of players get really discouraged. I mean, a mission like this typically takes at minimum an hour to complete. And when you get back to base and you aren't getting credit for the mission, a lot of players will feel compelled to restart the mission and try it again. The problem with that methodology is that when it comes to content creation, it becomes really difficult to try and set yourself up to a schedule and try to meet a deadline with recording footage if you're having to replay the same mission 3 or 4 times just to get it to successfully complete because the AI is bugging. And then you're left with the decision I was left with in this video of using footage of a failed mission and effectively skipping past that mission after the fact just to be able to use the footage to create a video. it's just, in terms of content creation, it's a major hindrance and something that potentially can prevent a good video from being made. You know, ideally, especially if you're doing a campaign playthrough, ideally you want to capture this footage in a single take. Because as long as you've got the footage, then cool. You know, you can edit it down from there, and what was an hour mission can get cut in half or even less. But if it's a failed mission, that's, from a content creation standpoint, that is, at least from what I've seen from other creators, something that tends to be shied away from. But in this video, I decided to keep the footage and show it, and hopefully the developers will see this and see what happens and how the AI is behaving, in case they haven't been shown it before. You know, it's been mentioned, but I don't know if anybody ever actually recorded any footage of it to submit to them to show what's going on. So this is the point here where the bug becomes apparent. At this stage, the new flight leader should be issuing an order to form up on him and continue with the mission. But he doesn't. Instead, he gets very low and very slow, about 150 miles an hour, and stays there circling this spot. And from what I can tell, he did so for the remainder of the mission, and so did the rest of the flight, because they were tied to him. And the problem there is, number one, as a player, I could sit here and circle until I'm bingo fuel. That's not terribly fun. Not to mention that for me to reach bingo fuel is probably going to take longer than the rest of the squadron, since I'm running my mixture in auto lean. The other issue with this is that it's not terribly realistic, in the sense that it is immersion breaking. There would not be any reason in combat why anybody would want to loiter this low and this slow for an extended period of time over enemy territory. You just wouldn't do it. You're asking to get shot. In fact, even at this stage, I'm not even completely sure that if another flight of enemy fighters came in, that the AI would even respond to their presence. Their behavior at this point is just completely illogical to me. So I would recommend that at the very least, regardless of whether you're the squadron commander or not, the campaign trigger points should be centered on the player and only the player. And the trigger zones should be large enough for you to be able to trigger the next action that is supposed to happen in the mission, even if you're out of position in formation. You know, normally when I fly as the commander, it seems like the waypoints trigger right around the 5 kilometer, 4 kilometer mark, somewhere in there. But in this mission, it doesn't happen. And the only thing I can think is that the trigger points, either by design or as an unintentional consequence of spaghetti code, are centered on the flight leader instead of the player. And the other thing I would suggest is that if the developers do decide to make all the trigger points player-centric, regardless of whether they're a wingman or a commander, you might also include a trigger for the AI that breaks them out of this bug. Something that tells them that, you know, if I fly to the next waypoint and I trigger that waypoint, then it tells the AI, okay, you have to move on with the mission, continue with the mission, continue to your target area. Because at that point, if you can get them to move and kind of break out of this little funk that they're doing, then hopefully when they reach the area they're supposed to be in, they can go about engaging targets. Now, it is worth pointing out that on the forum, the areas where I have seen this bug pointed out specifically mention that it happens during ground attack missions. But I think this shows that it also happens on the patrol missions as well. Because this is the same kind of behavior that is mentioned in the forum, where you get intercepted short of the target, the AI engages the enemy, and once there are no more enemies to engage, they just circle this spot on the map. And flying the rest of the route doesn't give you the option to complete the mission. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think I've beat that horse well and truly to death. I spent about 15 minutes in total. There was a good amount of footage here that wound up on the cutting room floor because it just wasn't interesting, and I thought this sequence here kind of showed what I wanted to show, but I did spend a good 15 or 20 minutes circling with the flight, trying to get them to move on, trying everything I could. Here I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's waiting for me to form up with the leader, except here I am formed up with the leader. I'm 300 meters away from him. If the leader is waiting for me to form up to move on with the mission, I should be well and truly close enough to him at this point, considering my assigned position in the flight, that it should be triggering him to move on with the mission, and he just never does it. And one of the other things, and I don't recall if I adequately captured it or not, but one of the other things that the AI does is, even when you are the commander and you order the flight to return to formation and continue with the mission, half of your flight will stay up high for an extended period of time without descending down to you to rejoin formation. And that's another behavior that I don't understand. So something in the logic definitely appears to be broken and is able to have the bug triggered fairly easily just by getting intercepted short of the target area. So by this point, you know, I spent 15 or 20 minutes circling with the flight and gave up on them and decided to try and fly to this waypoint. And this was where I discovered that it's not player centric, or if it is, it's not functioning correctly. Now, from experience having flown these missions before, I know that when I reach this waypoint, it should trigger another series of waypoints for my patrol route over the invasion beaches. But it never does. I spent a good 30 minutes, which is about the same amount of time that it normally takes to complete one of these missions, circling these landing beaches, and this waypoint never updated. And at this point in the mission, I was getting pretty nervous because I've got no backup. You know, I don't have the rest of my squadron with me, and I don't know where other Allied fighters are. So if I get engaged by more than 2 aircraft at this point, I'm going to be in a pretty difficult fight. And one that does not have high odds of me coming out on top. Now, thankfully, that doesn't wind up happening, but this would still be the kind of situation that we would be faced with as players, even if the waypoints are player-centric and operating properly, and the AI bugs and gets stuck short of the area where they're supposed to be. Because at that point, the only choice we as players would have is either to restart the mission or do like I did here and fly onto the target area to try and complete the mission alone. And I mean, it's far from perfect, but I think that having it set so that the waypoints and the trigger zones are player-centric and not AI-centric is probably going to be the quickest and easiest fix to this bug problem, to at least give the player the ability to complete the mission even if the AI bugs. right about here, I decide to bug out and head home. Waypoint's not updating. I'm not quite at bingo fuel yet, but I'm getting close enough to it that I don't see much point in staying in the area. So I decided to head on out. Now, as I was flying back, I did deviate course a little bit and did notice that the AI was still in that area near Cherbourg, circling that same spot. So, you know, it is what it is for this mission. We're certainly going to continue with Tom Sutherland in future videos, and we're going to see if we can get him all the way to the end of the Battle of Normandy, and maybe even take him into the Battle of Rhineland campaign if he survives. But I am still disappointed that I had to take a mission failure here, despite technically having done what the mission required. You know, it does leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth when you fail a mission because of a bug. So I hope the developers at 1CGS see this video and make note of the behavior of the AI and look into doing something about it. I know it may not seem like a very high priority, but I think the player base and content creators in particular would really appreciate having these kinds of issues addressed sooner rather than later, instead of just cranking out another new shiny for us. Polish up some of the broken stuff first and then give us a new shiny. Alright guys, well, that's going to do it for today's video. If you like the content, you like what you see on the channel so far, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification, get notified every time a new video drops. And make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what else you guys want to see on the channel. I do not plan on just limiting the content to aviation content. I do have some other ideas of things that I can add in, but let me hear from you guys. Let me know what you want to see. Alright, and here is our final tally. We were credited with 2 fighters, but we didn't get credit for completing the mission, even though we flew all that way and spent 90 minutes in the air trying to get it to complete. But we will be back to fly more missions with Thomas Sutherland, and we are not going to let this stop us from completing the campaign. So until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.